I never thought I'd be telling this story. Not because I'm ashamed, I've got nothing to be ashamed of, but because I never imagined my life could shatter so completely in just a few weeks. My name is Michael Harrison. 2 months ago, I had what most would call the perfect life. A beautiful wife named Elizabeth, two amazing kids, Lily, 14, and Josh, 11. A thriving marketing firm in downtown Chicago, and a house in the suburbs that we'd spent years turning into our dream home. We'd been married for 16 years. 16 years of building a life together, of morning kisses, family vacations, and whispered promises in the dark. Or so I thought. It was a Tuesday evening when everything changed. I remember because I'd just closed a major deal with a new client, and I was planning to surprise Elizabeth with tickets to Aruba for our upcoming anniversary. She was away on what she'd told me was a 3-day marketing conference in Detroit. The kids were at my sister's for the night, and I was enjoying a rare quiet evening, going through some client files at the kitchen island. The doorbell rang at 9:47 p.m. I know the exact time because I checked my watch, wondering who would be visiting so late. 2 police officers stood on my doorstep, their expressions grave. "Mr. Harrison?" the taller one asked. "Yes," I replied, my stomach instantly nodding. "I'm Officer Williams, and this is Officer Daniels. May we come in? It's about your wife, Elizabeth." The world seemed to slow down as they told me Elizabeth was in Northwestern Memorial Hospital. She'd been found severely injured in a hotel room in Chicago, not Detroit, after what they described as a violent altercation. "But that's impossible," I said, my voice sounding distant even to my own ears. "She's at a conference in Detroit." The officers exchanged a look I would come to recognize all too well in the coming days. That mixture of pity and discomfort that comes from knowing something terrible that you don't yet know. "Sir, we believe it's best if you come to the hospital. The doctors can explain her condition, and there are some other matters that need to be addressed." I grabbed my keys and wallet, my hands moving automatically while my mind raced. What hotel in Chicago? Why wasn't she in Detroit? Was she going to be okay? The drive to the hospital was a blur. Officer Williams drove while I sat in the passenger seat, gripping my phone and trying to make sense of what was happening. I called my sister, asked her to keep the kids overnight, told her there had been an accident, but I didn't have details yet. As we pulled into the hospital parking lot, I noticed my hands were trembling. Not from fear exactly, but from the adrenaline of knowing I was about to walk into something that would change everything. "Do you know what happened to her?" I asked Officer Williams as we rode the elevator up to the 4th floor. He cleared his throat. "She was found in a hotel room at the Lakefront Hotel. There had been an altercation with a male companion." The words hit me like a physical blow. Male companion, not colleague, not friend, companion. At the hospital, a doctor met me in a private consultation room. Dr. Reeves was a woman in her 50s with tired eyes and a gentle voice. She explained that Elizabeth had multiple contusions, a broken wrist, and a concussion. "She's stable," Dr. Reeves assured me, "but she's heavily sedated right now." "The injuries are serious but not life-threatening." I exhaled, relief washing over me. What happened? Was it a robbery? Was she in the wrong place at the wrong time? Another one of those looks passed across her face. "Mr. Harrison, the police will need to discuss the circumstances with you. Detective Parker is waiting outside." Detective Parker was a stocky man with a close-cropped beard and eyes that seemed to miss nothing. He asked me to sit down, and that's when my world truly began to crumble. "Mr. Harrison, your wife was found in a room at the Lakefront Hotel. She was registered there with a man named Thomas Blackwood. Do you know him?" I shook my head slowly. "No, I don't think so. He's listed as an employee at Sterling Marketing Group, the same company where your wife works." My mind was processing the information with painful slowness. "She told me she was at a conference in Detroit." Detective Parker nodded, his expression careful. "According to hotel staff, your wife and Mr. Blackwood have been regular guests for the past several months, usually on Tuesday and Thursday evenings." The words hit me like physical blows. Regular guests, several months, Tuesday and Thursday evenings, the nights Elizabeth had her late client meetings or office happy hours. "What happened to her?" I managed to ask, my voice strangled. "From what we've gathered, she and Mr. Blackwood had an altercation. He claims she told him she wanted to end their relationship. He became violent. A hotel guest in the next room called security after hearing screaming and what sounded like furniture being thrown. I sat perfectly still, feeling the blood drain from my face. Where is he now? In custody. He's being charged with aggravated assault. The detective continued talking, explaining procedure, and asking if I had any questions, but I barely heard him. My mind was racing through memories, recontextualizing moments I had never questioned. The late nights, the weekend work emergencies, the sudden business trips, the new lingerie I never saw her wear, the secretive text messages, the declining intimacy between us that I had blamed on our busy schedules. I had been completely, utterly blind. "Can I see her?" I asked, interrupting whatever the detective had been saying. He nodded. "She's in room 412. But Mr. Harrison," he paused, seeming to choose his words carefully, "she doesn't know we've contacted you yet." When she regained consciousness briefly, she gave the hospital her sister's name as her emergency contact. Another knife to the heart. Even in a crisis, she had tried to hide this from me. I walked to room 412 in a state of emotional numbness. When I pushed open the door, the sight that greeted me almost made me stagger backward. Elizabeth's face was swollen and bruised, her right eye completely closed. Her left wrist was in a cast, and various monitors beeped softly beside her bed. This woman, this stranger, was my wife of 16 years, the mother of my children, the person I had trusted most in the world. I stood there for a long time, just watching her breathe. Anger, betrayal, concern, and confusion warred within me. Part of me wanted to scream at her, to wake her up and demand answers. Another part wanted to turn around and never look back. But the largest part of me needed to understand how our life together could have been such a complete lie. A nurse came in to check Elizabeth's vitals, startling slightly when she saw me. "Are you family?" she asked. "I'm her husband," I replied, the words tasting bitter. She gave me a sympathetic smile. "She'll probably sleep through the night with the medication she's on. You might want to go home and come back in the morning." I nodded, but I knew I couldn't go home. Not to the house where every room, every piece of furniture, every photograph now seemed like props in some elaborate deception. Instead, I went to a 24-hour diner across from the hospital and ordered coffee. As the night stretched on, I made 3 decisions that would guide everything that followed. First, I would not break down. Not now, not ever. Elizabeth had taken enough from me. She wouldn't take my dignity, too. Second, I would protect my children from as much pain as possible while never lying to them. They deserved the truth, delivered with care but without deception. Third, I would rebuild my life and emerge stronger, with or without forgiveness in my heart. By morning, when I returned to the hospital, a cold clarity had replaced the shock. I wasn't there as a concerned husband, but as a man demanding answers. Elizabeth was awake when I entered her room. Her good eye widened in shock and then immediately filled with tears. "Michael," she whispered, her voice hoarse, "I'm so sorry." I stood at the foot of her bed, maintaining my distance. "Sorry for which part, Elizabeth?" "For cheating on me for months, for lying about where you were, or for getting caught." She flinched as if I'd struck her. "Please, Michael. It's not what you think." I laughed, a harsh sound that surprised even me. "Really? Because I think you've been sleeping with your coworker Thomas while lying to my face. I think you've been betraying our marriage, our family, and everything we built together. Please tell me what part I've misunderstood." Tears streamed down her face, making tracks through the light makeup someone, probably her sister, had applied to her bruises. "I made a terrible mistake. I got caught up in something that shouldn't have happened, but I love you and the kids more than anything. Thomas means nothing to me. He meant enough for you to risk our entire life together," I replied, my voice steady despite the rage boiling inside me. "He meant enough for you to lie to me repeatedly, to create elaborate stories about conferences and meetings. He meant enough for you to check into hotels with him while I was at home, helping Josh with his science project and telling him Mom was working hard at a conference." She tried to reach for me with her good hand, but I stepped back. "Michael, please. I know I've hurt you terribly, but this isn't who I am. Thomas, he made me feel special, desired. Things between us had become so routine, So predictable. Stop, I cut her off, feeling physically ill. Don't you dare blame this on our marriage. If you were unhappy, you could have talked to me. We could have gone to counseling. You could have done 1,000 things before deciding to cheat. He hurt me, Michael, she whispered, gesturing to her injuries. When I told him I was ending it, that I couldn't do this anymore, he lost control. Doesn't that show you I was trying to make things right? I looked at her, this woman I had once believed I knew better than anyone else in the world. No, Elizabeth, it shows me you were trying to avoid consequences, and only after you got caught in a situation that spiraled out of your control. A nurse appeared in the doorway. Everything okay in here? I nodded tightly. I was just leaving. My wife needs her rest. As I turned to go, Elizabeth called after me, panic in her voice. Michael, please don't tell the kids. Please. Let me come home, and we can work through this together. I paused in the doorway, not looking back. They deserve better than lies, Elizabeth. So do I. The drive home was when the reality truly hit me. How would I tell Lily and Josh that their mother had been living a double life, that the foundation of our family had been built on deception? The thought of their pain made my hands grip the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. When I arrived home, I found my sister Katie waiting for me. She had brought the kids back from her house, but had told them only that their mother had been in an accident. Their faces were anxious as they bombarded me with questions. Is Mom okay? What happened? When can we see her? I hugged them both tightly, then asked Katie if she could give us some privacy. The look on my face must have told her how serious it was, because she squeezed my shoulder and left without question. I sat with Lily and Josh on the living room couch, taking a deep breath before speaking. Mom is in the hospital, and physically she's going to be okay, I began carefully. She has some injuries, a broken wrist, bruises, and a concussion, but she'll recover. Relief washed over their faces, but they could sense there was more. There's something else I need to tell you, and it's going to be hard to hear, I continued, my heart breaking for them. The reason Mom is in the hospital is complicated. She wasn't where she told us she would be. She was with another man, someone from her work. They had been seeing each other secretly for some time. Lily's face crumpled immediately, tears spilling down her cheeks. Josh looked confused, then angry, his young features hardening in a way no 11-year-old should. You mean she was cheating on you? He demanded, his voice cracking. I nodded, placing a hand on his shoulder. Yes, and this man hurt her when she told him she wanted to end their relationship. So she was lying to all of us? Lily asked, her voice small. All those nights and trips, she was with him. It seems that way, I replied, trying to keep my own emotions in check for their sake. I hate her, Josh declared suddenly, jumping to his feet. I hate her for doing this to us. I pulled him back gently. Josh, it's okay to be angry. I'm angry too, but hate is a heavy thing to carry. Your mom made terrible choices, but she's still your mom, and she still loves you both very much. Will you forgive her? Lily asked, her tear-filled eyes searching mine. Will things go back to normal? The question hit me hard. I could have given them false hope, told them everything would be fine, but I had promised myself no more lies in this family. I don't know what will happen between your mom and me, I said honestly, but I do know two things for certain. First, none of this is your fault, not one bit of it. And second, no matter what happens, I will always be here for you both. We'll get through this together. Josh threw his arms around me, burying his face in my chest. Lily joined the embrace, and we sat there holding each other as they cried. I held my own tears back, determined to be their rock in this storm. That night, after they had finally fallen asleep, Lily only after I let her take one of my old t-shirts to sleep in, and Josh only after extracting a promise that he wouldn't have to see his mother until he was ready. I sat alone in my home office with a glass of bourbon. I didn't drink it. Instead, I stared at the amber liquid, thinking about drowning my pain, about how easy it would be to fall apart. But that wouldn't help my children, and it certainly wouldn't help me. I poured the bourbon down the sink and made another decision. I would find out everything. No more surprises, no more blindsides. I needed the complete truth if I was ever going to move forward. The next morning, I called James Reynolds, a private investigator a client had once recommended. I was blunt about what I needed. I need to know everything about my wife's affair, how long it's been going on, where they went, what they did, who knew about it. I need hard evidence, not suspicions. James didn't ask why. He didn't offer platitudes or sympathy. He simply said, I'll need some basic information to start, and a retainer. When can we meet? 3 days later, while Elizabeth was still in the hospital, now calling my phone constantly, leaving tearful voicemails begging me to answer, James delivered his first report. The affair with Thomas Blackwood had been going on for 7 months, not several months, as the detective had said. They had regularly met at the Lakefront Hotel, but also at his apartment in Lincoln Park. They had taken weekend trips together to Wisconsin and Michigan, carefully disguised as work events or girls' trips with Elizabeth's friends. The evidence was meticulous and devastating. Credit card statements showing hotel charges, restaurant receipts for intimate dinners, text message logs with thousands of exchanges, though not the content. Even flight information for a weekend they had spent in New York, during which Elizabeth had told me she was at a marketing retreat in Philadelphia. There were photographs too. Elizabeth and Thomas entering the hotel together, holding hands in a park I didn't recognize, kissing in his car in the parking garage of her office building. Each image was like a knife, but I forced myself to look at all of them. This was the reality I hadn't been willing to see. There's more, James said, his voice careful. Do you want to know everything? I nodded, bracing myself. Based on interviews with hotel staff and some of your wife's co-workers, this wasn't Blackwood's first workplace relationship. He has a history of pursuing married women at the companies where he works. He's been at Sterling Marketing for just over a year, and in that time, there are rumors of at least one other affair before your wife. The information should have made me feel better, knowing Elizabeth had fallen prey to a practiced predator. But instead, it only raised more questions. Had she been so easily seduced? Had our marriage meant so little to her? There's something else, James continued. The night your wife was injured, she wasn't ending the relationship. According to a bartender I spoke with, they were arguing because Blackwood had been seen with another woman, a new account executive who started at Sterling last month. The revelation landed like a physical blow. Elizabeth had lied even about trying to end the affair. She hadn't been injured while trying to do the right thing. She'd been injured during a lover's quarrel over another woman. I thanked James, paid him, and asked him to continue his investigation. I wanted to know everything, every lie, every deception, every person who might have known and said nothing. That afternoon, Elizabeth's sister Olivia showed up at my door unannounced. I hadn't spoken to her or any of Elizabeth's family since the incident. Michael, we need to talk, she said, attempting to push past me into the house. I blocked her entry. Whatever you have to say, you can say it here. Her eyes narrowed. Elizabeth is being discharged tomorrow. She needs to come home to be with her family to heal, both physically and emotionally. This isn't her home anymore, I replied calmly. Olivia's face flushed with anger. You can't be serious. After 16 years of marriage, you're throwing her away because of one mistake. I laughed humorlessly. One mistake. She had a 7-month affair, Olivia. She lied to me and our children countless times. She created elaborate stories to cover her deception. That's not one mistake. That's hundreds of deliberate choices. People make bad decisions when they're unhappy, she countered. Maybe if you had paid more attention to her. Stop right there, I cut her off, my voice dropping dangerously low. Don't you dare try to blame me for her actions. Elizabeth is an adult who made her own choices. She loves you, Michael. She made a horrible error in judgment, but she wants to make it right. Doesn't your marriage vow mean anything? For better or worse. Those vows also included fidelity, I pointed out, and respect, and honesty, all of which she discarded for 7 months. Olivia's expression shifted to one of concern. What about the kids? They need their mother. They need truth and stability. Elizabeth shattered both. And yes, they absolutely need their mother, but I won't force them to pretend everything is fine when it isn't. You've always been cold, Michael, she spat, always so logical and controlled. Maybe that's why she looked elsewhere, for someone who could show real emotion. The accusation stung, but I refused to let it show. You should go, Olivia, and you can tell Elizabeth she can stay with you while we figure out next steps legally. Legally, You're already talking to lawyers. I will be, I confirmed, and I suggest she does the same. After Olivia left, I stood on the porch for a long time, replaying her words. Had I been cold? Had I driven Elizabeth to seek comfort elsewhere? The doubts crept in, threatening the clarity I had fought so hard to maintain. But then I remembered the photographs, the evidence of Elizabeth's calculated deception, and my resolve strengthened. This wasn't about my failings as a husband. This was about Elizabeth's choices and their consequences. The next day, I received a call from Elizabeth's boss, Richard Sterling himself. I had met him several times at company functions, always finding him to be professional if somewhat detached. Michael, I wanted to reach out personally about this terrible situation, he began, his voice grave. First and foremost, to express my sincere regrets about what has happened. I appreciate that, Richard, I replied, wondering what his angle was. I want you to know that Thomas Blackwood has been terminated, effective immediately. We have a strict policy against workplace relationships, especially between managers and their subordinates, which he violated repeatedly. That was news to me. Thomas was Elizabeth's manager. There was a pause. Yes, for the past year. He was the senior account director overseeing her team. Did you not know that? Another piece of the puzzle clicked into place. All those times Elizabeth had complained about her micromanaging boss, the late nights she claimed were demanded by her unreasonable superior, she had been talking about her lover. We're also offering Elizabeth a generous severance package, Richard continued. While her involvement violates our policies as well, we recognize that there was a power dynamic at play, and we want to handle this situation with appropriate sensitivity. I could read between the lines. They were worried about a lawsuit, about the PR nightmare if this became public. I understand, I said, and I appreciate your call. After hanging up, I contacted my attorney, Samuel Whitaker. I had used Sam for business matters over the years, but never for anything personal. He listened quietly as I explained the situation, only asking occasional clarifying questions. You have several options, he said when I finished. None of them particularly pleasant, I'm afraid. I'm not looking for pleasant, I told him. I'm looking for fair. In that case, the first step is to secure your finances. Joint accounts should be frozen or divided, credit cards canceled or limits lowered. You should document all assets and liabilities immediately. I had already begun that process, moving half of our joint savings into a separate account in my name and keeping meticulous records of all transactions. Next, you need to decide if you want to pursue divorce or legal separation. Given what you've told me, you have grounds for an at-fault divorce in Illinois, which could potentially impact the division of assets in any support arrangements. What about the children? I asked. I want primary custody. Sam's expression was cautious. That's more complicated. Courts generally prefer joint custody arrangements unless there's evidence that one parent is unfit. While infidelity is grounds for divorce, it doesn't automatically make someone an unfit parent in the eyes of the law. I nodded, absorbing this unwelcome reality. What about Sterling Marketing? Do I have any recourse against them? Their senior employee was having an affair with his married subordinate. Possibly. Workplace sexual harassment laws could come into play, especially with the power dynamic between them. But that would be Elizabeth's claim to make, not yours. Unless. Unless what? Unless you could prove that their negligence directly impacted you. For instance, if they knew about the relationship and failed to address it, allowing it to continue and ultimately causing you harm. But that's a difficult case to make. I thought about the rumors James had mentioned, about Thomas's history of workplace affairs, if the company had known and done nothing. I'll think about it, I told Sam. For now, let's focus on protecting my interests and the children. By the time Elizabeth was discharged from the hospital, I had a temporary plan in place. I had taken a leave of absence from work to be with the kids. I had changed the locks on the house. I had informed the children's school about the situation, asking them to be aware of any behavioral changes and to contact me directly with concerns. Elizabeth went to stay with Olivia, as I had suggested. The day after her discharge, she came to the house while the kids were at school, her face still bruised but healing, her wrist in a cast. I met her on the porch, refusing to invite her inside. I need to get some of my things, she said, her voice small. I've packed a suitcase with clothes and personal items, I replied, nodding to the large suitcase I'd placed by the door. Anything else you need, you can request through Sam Whitaker. He's my attorney. Her face crumpled. Michael, please, can't we at least talk? I've made a terrible mistake, but I love you. I love our family. We can get through this. There is no we anymore, Elizabeth, I said, surprised by how calm I felt. You destroyed that over 7 months of lying and cheating. People recover from affairs, she insisted. Marriages survive this kind of crisis all the time. Some do, I acknowledged, but I don't think ours will. Because it's not just the affair, Elizabeth. It's the magnitude of the deception. It's the fact that you were sleeping with your boss while complaining to me about him. It's the trips you took together while I stayed home with our children. It's the fact that you weren't even trying to end things with him. You were fighting because he was cheating on you. Her eyes widened in shock. How do you... I know everything, I interrupted. Every hotel stay, every weekend trip, every lie you told me and the kids. And I know you only got caught because Thomas started seeing someone else, and you confronted him about it. Tears streamed down her face. That's not true. I was ending it. I told him it was over. Stop lying, I said, my voice finally betraying some emotion. Even now, when you've been caught, when there's evidence of what really happened, you're still lying. The kids, she said, changing tactics. They need me. You can't keep me from my children. I'm not keeping you from them. Josh doesn't want to see you right now. Lily is confused and hurt. When they're ready, we'll arrange visits. But it will be on their terms, not yours. She stared at me, her expression hardening slightly. You've turned them against me. No, Elizabeth. You did that yourself when you decided your affair was more important than your family's trust. Before she could respond, a car pulled into the driveway. Thomas Blackwood stepped out, looking uncomfortable but determined. My blood ran cold at the sight of him. This was the man who had been sleeping with my wife, who had put his hands on her body, who had shared intimate moments that should have been mine alone. This was also the man who had beaten her badly enough to put her in the hospital. What the hell is he doing here? I demanded, stepping forward instinctively to place myself between Elizabeth and Thomas. I asked him to come, Elizabeth admitted. I thought if we both talked to you, explain things. Explain things, I echoed incredulously. What could he possibly explain that would make any difference? Thomas approached, his hands raised slightly as if in surrender. Mr. Harrison, I know you have every reason to hate me. You're damn right I do, I cut him off. You slept with my wife for 7 months, lied to her about seeing other women, and then beat her when she confronted you. Give me one good reason why I shouldn't put you in the hospital right now. He flinched at my words. It wasn't like that. I never meant to hurt her. Things just escalated. Things escalated, I repeated flatly. That's your explanation for breaking my wife's wrist and giving her a concussion? Michael, please, Elizabeth interjected. We're just trying to make things right. I looked between them, suddenly understanding. You're back together, aren't you? After everything, after he put you in the hospital, you've taken him back. Elizabeth's silence was confirmation enough. I laughed, a bitter sound that seemed to surprise all three of us. Unbelievable. You know what? You deserve each other. Two liars playing games with people's lives. Thomas stepped forward. Look, I love Elizabeth. What happened between us was wrong. The affair, not just the incident. We both know that, but we want to move forward honestly now. Honestly, I repeated, you wouldn't recognize honesty if it slapped you in the face, which, by the way, is what I'm restraining myself from doing right now. Thomas's face darkened. He took another step toward me, his body tensing. You think you're better than me? Thanos, you with your perfect life and your moral high ground. You have no idea what Elizabeth and I have together. Something inside me snapped. Before I could think, my fist connected with his jaw, sending him staggering backward. The pain that shot through my hand was nothing compared to the satisfaction of seeing him sprawled on my driveway. Get off my property, I said, my voice deadly calm. Both of you. Thomas scrambled to his feet, holding his jaw. For a moment I thought he might retaliate, but Elizabeth grabbed his arm. Let's go, Thomas. This isn't helping. I turned to Elizabeth. I'm still the mother of your children, she said, a note of defiance entering her voice. You can't just erase me from their lives. I never said I would. But you need to understand something, both of you. This little reconciliation you've staged, it changes nothing. I'm still filing for divorce. I'm still seeking primary custody. And I'm still going to make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of people you are. I went inside and closed the door. Through the window, I watched as Elizabeth grabbed the suitcase, said something angrily to Thomas, and then got into his car. They drove away, leaving me alone in the house that had once been filled with a family I thought was happy. That night, when Lily and Josh came home from their after-school activities, I sat them down again. Your mom came by today to pick up some of her things, I told them. She's staying with Aunt Olivia for now. Did she ask about us? Lily asked, her voice small. Yes, she did. She misses you both very much and wants to see you when you're ready. Josh's face hardened. I'm not ready. I don't know if I'll ever be ready. I put an arm around his shoulders. That's okay, buddy. No one is going to force you to see her until you want to. Is she coming back home? Lily asked. I took a deep breath. No, honey. Your mom and I are going to be getting a divorce. That means we won't be married anymore, and we won't be living together. Lily's eyes filled with tears, but she nodded as if she had expected this answer. Josh leaned into me, his body rigid with tension. There's something else you should know, I continued, deciding they deserved the full truth. The man your mom was seeing, Thomas, he was at the house today too. The guy who hurt her. Josh asked, his voice rising. Why would she be with him after he did that to her? I chose my words carefully. Sometimes adults make complicated choices that are hard to understand. Your mom and Thomas have apparently decided to continue their relationship. That's messed up, Josh declared. It is what it is, I replied. But here's what I want you both to remember. None of this is your fault, not one bit of it, and nothing that's happening changes how much your mom and I love you. But everything is changing, Lily said, tears now streaming down her face. Our whole family is broken. I pulled her close. Some things are changing, yes, but my love for you isn't. My commitment to being the best dad I can be isn't. We're still a family, just a different kind than before. I held my children as they processed this new reality, wondering how we had arrived at this point and where we would go from here. The next few weeks were a blur of legal meetings, therapy appointments for the kids, and attempting to maintain some semblance of normalcy. Elizabeth made multiple attempts to see the children, but Josh remained adamant in his refusal, and Lily was hesitant, agreeing only to a supervised lunch at a restaurant. I didn't attend that lunch, having arranged for my sister Katie to accompany Lily instead. When they returned, Lily was quiet and withdrawn. How did it go? I asked gently after Katie had left. Lily shrugged, picking at a loose thread on her sweater. Weird. Mom kept crying and saying how much she missed us. She had Thomas with her, even though Aunt Katie told her not to bring him. My jaw tightened. Thomas was there. That wasn't the agreement. He waited in the car mostly, but he came in at the end to say hi. Lily's expression was troubled. He tried to act all nice, telling me how much Mom talks about me and Josh. I didn't like it. I took a deep breath, tamping down my anger. I'm sorry that happened, Lily. It won't happen again. Mom said she's going to fight for us, Lily continued, her voice small. She said you're turning us against her, and she's not going to let you keep us from her. The words sent a chill through me. Not because I was afraid of losing custody. I had confidence in my attorney and in the evidence we had gathered. But because Elizabeth was clearly willing to put the children through a messy custody battle rather than respect their feelings. Your mom loves you, I said carefully, and she's hurting right now. Sometimes when people are hurting, they say things they don't mean. Lily looked up at me, her eyes wise beyond her 14 years. I think she meant it, Dad. The next day I received legal papers informing me that Elizabeth was countering my petition for primary custody with one of her own, claiming I was alienating the children from her and creating a hostile environment. She was also seeking half of my business assets, claiming she had contributed significantly to my success through her support over the years. Sam called shortly after the papers arrived. This is just the opening salvo, he assured me. She doesn't have a strong case for primary custody, especially with the evidence of her affair and the ongoing relationship with the man who assaulted her. As for the business assets, we can demonstrate that your company was established before the marriage and has been maintained separately. What about the alienation claim? I asked. It's standard in cases like this, Sam explained, but the children are old enough that the court will take their preferences into account, especially Josh. The fact that you've already enrolled them in therapy and are following professional recommendations for handling the situation will work in your favor. Despite Sam's reassurances, the legal battle became increasingly ugly. Elizabeth's attorney, a sharp-tongued woman named Victoria Winters, painted me as an emotionally distant workaholic who had driven Elizabeth to seek comfort elsewhere. She submitted affidavits from Elizabeth's friends and family members, all testifying to my alleged coldness and neglect. In response, Sam gathered statements from my friends, colleagues, and even the children's teachers, all attesting to my involvement in the kids' lives and my reputation as a dedicated father. We also submitted the private investigator's report, complete with photographs and detailed timelines of Elizabeth's deception. The most painful moment came when Josh and Lily were interviewed by a court-appointed guardian ad litem, whose job was to represent their best interests in the custody proceedings. Both children spoke openly about their feelings, Josh's anger, Lily's confusion and hurt. Both expressed a desire to live primarily with me, though Lily said she would be willing to see her mother regularly under certain conditions. As the legal battle dragged on, consuming time and emotional energy, I found myself struggling to maintain the strength I had promised my children. Late at night, after they were asleep, I would sit in my office, staring at old family photographs and wondering how something that had seemed so perfect could disintegrate so completely. It was during one of these moments of reflection that I received a call from an unknown number. Mr. Harrison, this is Sarah Mitchell. I used to work at Sterling Marketing with your wife. I didn't immediately recognize the name. How can I help you, Miss Mitchell? Actually, I think I might be able to help you, she replied. I left Sterling 6 months ago, but I was there when Thomas Blackwood was hired. I think there's something you should know. Sarah explained that Thomas had been fired from his previous job for inappropriate relationships with married coworkers. Sterling Marketing had been aware of this. It had come up in his background check, but had hired him anyway because of his impressive client portfolio. Richard Sterling knew, I asked, thinking back to my conversation with Elizabeth's boss. Not just knew, Sarah confirmed. He explicitly told HR to ignore the red flags because Thomas was bringing in a major pharmaceutical client. This was exactly the kind of negligence Sam had mentioned might give us leverage. Would you be willing to make a statement to that effect? Officially, for the court. There was a pause. That's why I'm calling. I've been following your case. News travels fast in the industry. What happened to your family wasn't right, and Sterling Marketing's hands aren't clean. The next day, I forwarded Sarah's statement to Sam, who immediately recognized its significance. This changes things, he said. We now have evidence that Sterling Marketing knowingly employed someone with a history of workplace sexual misconduct, putting your wife and other employees at risk. We can add the company to your suit, claiming their negligence contributed to the destruction of your marriage. It was a turning point in the case. Once Sterling Marketing was named in the lawsuit, their attorneys reached out immediately, seeking a private settlement. They offered a substantial sum in exchange for a non-disclosure agreement and removal of the company from the suit. After careful consideration and discussion with Sam, I accepted the settlement. Not for the money, but for the vindication it represented. The company's willingness to pay was an admission of culpability, an acknowledgement that they had played a role in the destruction of my family. News of the settlement reached Elizabeth and Thomas quickly. The next day, I received a tearful call from Elizabeth. How could you do this? She demanded. Sterling Marketing is firing Thomas because of your lawsuit. They say he's a liability now. Actions have consequences, I replied simply. His, yours, and the company's. You're systematically destroying everything in my life, she accused. First our marriage, then my relationship with my children, now my career and Thomas's. The accusation was so backwards, so detached from reality, that I actually laughed. Elizabeth, listen to yourself. You destroyed our marriage with your affair. You damaged your relationship with the children by betraying their trust. You put your career at risk by sleeping with your boss. None of that was my doing. You never loved me, she said bitterly. Not really. If you had, you would have fought for our marriage instead of throwing it away. I loved you more than you will ever know, I corrected her, my voice steady despite the pain her words caused. I loved the woman I thought you were, but that person doesn't exist, and I respect myself too much to fight for a lie. After hanging up, I felt a strange sense of closure. Elizabeth's inability to take responsibility for her actions confirmed that I was making the right decision in moving forward without her. The custody battle ended more quickly than anticipated. Faced with the evidence we had gathered and the children's clear preferences, Elizabeth's attorney advised her to accept a joint custody arrangement with primary physical custody granted to me. She would have the children every other weekend and one evening per week for dinner, with additional time during school holidays. On the day the divorce was finalized, I sat in the courtroom watching Elizabeth sign the papers, her face a mask of resignation. Thomas was not present. Their relationship had apparently ended shortly after he lost his job, a fact that surprised me only in its predictability. As we left the courthouse, Elizabeth approached me one last time. I know you won't believe me, but I am sorry, Michael. For all of it. I looked at her, this woman who had once been the center of my world, and felt a complex mixture of emotions. Anger, sadness, but primarily a deep weariness. I believe that you're sorry it ended this way, I replied, but I'm not sure you're sorry for the choices that led us here. She didn't argue, which was perhaps the most honest thing she had done in months. What will you tell the kids? She asked. The truth, I said, that we've officially ended our marriage, but not our commitment to being their parents, that we'll both always love them, even if we couldn't make our marriage work. She nodded, tears filling her eyes. I do love them, Michael, more than anything. Then show them, I said simply, not with words or tears or dramatic gestures, with consistency, with honesty, with respect for their feelings. And in the weeks that followed, Elizabeth seemed to spiral. Without Thomas, without her job, and with limited access to her children, she began drinking heavily. Several times she showed up for her scheduled visits with the kids, clearly intoxicated, forcing me to turn her away at the door. One night, about 2 months after the divorce was finalized, I received a call from Olivia. Michael, I'm worried about Elizabeth, she said, her voice tense. She's been drinking a lot, and she's talking about how she's ruined everything, how she has nothing left to live for. Despite everything, my heart clenched with concern. Has she threatened to hurt herself? Not explicitly, but she's in a dark place. I think she needs professional help. I sighed. I'll call her therapist. Maybe they can recommend an intervention or inpatient treatment. She needs more than a therapist, Michael, Olivia insisted. She needs her family. She needs to know she hasn't lost everything. I can't give her what she wants, Olivia. I can't undo the divorce or pretend the affair never happened. You don't have to take her back to show some compassion, she snapped. If anything happens to her, how will you explain that to your children? The accusation stung, but I refused to be manipulated. Don't put that on me. Elizabeth is an adult responsible for her own choices. I'll reach out to her therapist, but that's all I can offer. I did call Dr. Matthews, Elizabeth's therapist, who thanked me for the information and promised to follow up immediately. I thought that would be the end of it, that Elizabeth would get the help she needed and eventually find a way forward. 3 days later, at 2:17 a.m., my doorbell rang. I stumbled downstairs, bleary-eyed and confused, to find 2 police officers on my doorstep. My heart dropped. It was a scene too familiar, too reminiscent of that first night when everything had changed. Mr. Harrison? The female officer asked. Yes, I replied, already knowing something terrible had happened. I'm Officer Miller, and this is Officer Rodriguez. May we come in? It's about your ex-wife, Elizabeth Harrison. I led them into the living room, grateful that the kids were asleep upstairs. What's happened? Officer Miller's expression was gentle but grave. I'm very sorry to inform you that Ms. Harrison was involved in a single-vehicle accident earlier tonight. Her car went off the road on Lakeshore Drive and struck a concrete barrier. Is she okay? I asked, though I already knew the answer from their expressions. She did not survive the crash, sir. The paramedics pronounced her dead at the scene. I sat down heavily, the news hitting me with physical force. Despite everything that had happened between us, despite the pain and betrayal, I had never wished this kind of harm on Elizabeth. The initial investigation suggests she was intoxicated, Officer Rodriguez added. Her blood alcohol level was well over the legal limit. Were there any other vehicles involved? I asked, trying to process the information. No, sir. Just hers. She was traveling at a high rate of speed when she lost control of the vehicle. They continued talking, explaining procedures, and asking if there was someone who could help me notify next of kin, but I barely heard them. My mind was racing with thoughts of Lily and Josh, of how I would tell them their mother was gone, of how this final, irreversible act would shape their understanding of her. After the officers left, promising to follow up with more information, I sat alone in the dark living room, overwhelmed by a complex mix of emotions, grief, anger, guilt, and a profound sadness for what might have been. The next morning before the kids woke up, I received a call from Olivia. She was devastated, her voice barely recognizable through her sobs. They found a note, she said, in her apartment. The police gave it to me, but I think you should see it. It's addressed to you and the kids. I went to Olivia's house immediately. She handed me an envelope without meeting my eyes. Inside was a single sheet of paper covered in Elizabeth's handwriting, the letters uneven and slanting, evidence of her intoxication when she wrote it. Michael, Lily, and Josh, I know words can never undo what I've done or heal the pain I've caused. I've tried to find a way forward, to rebuild something from the ashes of what I destroyed, but I can't seem to escape the weight of my mistakes. Michael, you were right about everything. Our marriage wasn't perfect, but it was good and real and worth fighting for. I threw it away for something hollow and destructive. Thomas never loved me, I see that now. But even if he had, it wouldn't have justified what I did to you and our children. You deserved better than my lies and betrayal. Lily and Josh, my beautiful children, I'm so sorry for the confusion and pain I've brought into your lives. You deserved a mother who put you first, who protected you from harm instead of causing it. Please know that my failures as a wife have nothing to do with my love for you. That love has always been real and pure, even when my actions didn't reflect it. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even know if I deserve it. But I do want you all to know that I understand now, too late, what I threw away. The emptiness I feel isn't because I lost a lover or a job. It's because I lost the only things that ever truly mattered. My family, my integrity, your trust. I'm sorry for everything. Elizabeth, I read the note twice, then folded it carefully and placed it back in the envelope. The words were a confession, an apology, and a goodbye all at once. They didn't erase what had happened, but they revealed a clarity that Elizabeth had never shown in life. Did you know she was this desperate? Olivia asked, her voice hollow. I shook my head. I knew she was struggling, but I didn't realize how deep her despair had become. Could we have done more? She wondered, not accusingly, but with genuine uncertainty. I don't know, I admitted. Maybe. Or maybe this path was set in motion long ago, by choices that couldn't be undone. We sat in silence for a few moments, two people united only by their connection to a woman who was now gone. How will you tell the children? Olivia finally asked. I took a deep breath. Honestly, gently, but honestly. Telling Lily and Josh about their mother's death was the hardest thing I had ever done. Their reactions were as different as their personalities. Lily collapsed in tears, while Josh went completely silent, his face a mask of shock and confusion. Was it? Did she do it on purpose? Lily asked through her tears. I chose my words carefully. The police believe it was an accident caused by her drinking. But she left a note that suggests she was in a very dark place emotionally. Can we read it? Josh asked, his first words since I'd broken the news. Yes, I said, when you're ready. It's for you as much as it was for me. The days that followed were a blur of funeral arrangements, condolence calls, and trying to support my children through their grief. Elizabeth's death had transformed her in their eyes, no longer just the mother who had betrayed their trust, but now a tragic figure whose mistakes had led to her destruction. At the funeral, I stood with Lily and Josh, accepting condolences from friends, family, and colleagues who didn't know the full story. Thomas Blackwood did not attend, a small mercy for which I was grateful. As we stood by Elizabeth's grave during the final prayers, I felt Lily slip her hand into mine. "Dad," she whispered, "are you okay?" I looked down at my daughter, struck by her concern for me even in her own grief. "I'm focused on you and Josh right now." "But you lost someone too," she insisted, "even after everything." Her insight brought unexpected tears to my eyes. "Yes, I did. I lost the woman I married, the mother of my children, the future we had planned together. And even though things ended the way they did, it's still a loss." Josh, overhearing our conversation, moved closer. "Do you think she really meant what she wrote in the note? That she was sorry?" I put my arm around his shoulders. "I do. I think in those final days she saw things clearly for the first time in a long while." "I wish she had seen them sooner," he said, his voice cracking, "before everything fell apart." "Me too, buddy," I replied. "Me too." In the months that followed, we found a new rhythm to our lives, one shaped by loss but not defined by it. The kids and I attended grief counseling, both individually and as a family. We talked about Elizabeth often, remembering the good times while acknowledging the painful end. One evening, about 6 months after the funeral, I found Lily sitting on our back porch, looking at old family photos on her phone. "You know what's weird?" she said as I sat down beside her. I'm starting to forget what her voice sounded like. I nodded. "That happens. But you'll never forget who she was to you. The good parts, along with the rest." "Do you think she ever found peace at the end?" It was a question I had asked myself many times. I hope so. Her notes suggested she had found clarity, if not peace. Sometimes understanding our mistakes is the closest we can come to making peace with them. Lily leaned her head against my shoulder. "I miss who she used to be, before all of this." "Me too," I admitted, "but I'm grateful for what we still have. Each other." As we sat there in comfortable silence, watching the sun set over our backyard, I reflected on the journey that had brought us here. Elizabeth's betrayal had shattered our family, and her death had complicated our healing. But in the midst of the pain and loss, we had found resilience, truth, and a deeper appreciation for the fragility of human connection. My wife had cheated and ended up in the hospital. Everyone had asked me to forgive her, but my journey had never been about forgiveness. It had been about truth, about protecting my children, about finding a way forward with dignity and integrity. In the end, Elizabeth had faced the consequences of her actions in the most tragic way possible. And while I would never have wished that outcome on her, I had learned that some breaks can't be mended, some trust can't be rebuilt, and some choices change the course of our lives forever. But I had also learned that even after such profound loss and betrayal, life continues. And with enough courage and honesty, so can we.